This is Dr. Newmark. I'm recording this video to show you a few examples of past documentation plans. I've anonymized these plans. These are from past students from 4 years ago, and I want you to know that I'm always really careful about that. So I've pulled a few examples from a previous class that were really strong, but there's a few things that I need to explain. First of all, as I explained in the student conferences I've had thus far, this assignment used to be a group assignment and it now is an individual assignment. So as a group assignment, it had some other aspects that were required of each student. So I'm going to be revising the rubric that you see on the right side of your screen so it doesn't have those elements in it. But for now, I'm going to show you how this doc plan on the screen on the left performed on the rubric that it had. Okay, so the group decided, and again, you aren't working in a group, you're working by yourself. They came up with a name for their company, Act Now, with their acronym, and this was all of their initials, Act Now Publishing. And they had documentation plan for the Nest Learning Thermostat, third generation, and they came up with an address for their company. I don't know that this particular aesthetic on their cover page sends a super strong professional message, but it's not bad. So let's just jump right into what they did next. They have their table of contents, who we are, statement, proposal, graphic. They go into describing what the Nest Learning Thermostat is, proposal overview, goals, qualifications, receivables, deliverables, tools, initial outline, timeline and milestones, location, cost, intellectual property, closing, and agreement. So you might think to yourself, oh wow, my documentation plan is not going to have this many parts. That's all right. I think this group, even though they got a 93%, so they got an A, some of their content was a bit bloated, and I think this was a result of it being a group project because there were so many different voices, because they would break up the different parts of the doc plan and assign them to different people in the group. So, and I mentioned in conferences that you guys don't really need to do the cost section because that's completely conjectural in a class like this. Okay, so now we're on their first content page, and this is where they begin who we are and how we can help you. They've got a little bit of trouble with the title style capitalization, but that's all right. They also have a little bit of trouble with line spacing. You can see that this is a little bit more than this. Those are all things with an eye towards consistency that you want to be sure is consistent, to put it quite bluntly. So they are using an existing product, the Nest Learning Thermostat. So they explain how their company is prepared to do the documentation and what the documentation is going to provide vis-a-vis who the company is. Okay. So I don't know that they needed this label graphic and that they needed to provide images of the Nest thermostat. They can do that, but they don't need to label this section as graphic. So they have a paragraph where they explain what the Nest thermostat does, which is fine. That's great. It shows that you that you understand your client's product. So they understand also that the proposal is to the stakeholders. And they name the secondary audience, which will be the consumers of Nest Labs. That's terminology from academia. Like Nest isn't going to call their own consumer base a secondary audience. So this could be rephrased. Then they jump into what they're going to be providing in terms of documentation and their deliverables and the tools that they're going to use. And they identify what their goals are. And since this video is pausable, I recommend that you do pause it so you can read some of this content. They mention what their qualifications are, what they need to get from Nest in order to create the documentation, and what the deliverables are. So the deliverable 1 is the user guide, deliverable 2 is the quick start guide, and 3, they had to do HTML help. You guys have to do a FAQ page, so that's a little bit different for you guys. Tools, their outline, their timeline and milestones, and their cost. You don't have to deal with that. They were very, very thorough in this report. As you can see, this is exceptionally thorough. They worked really hard. These are just names of the actual people who are involved in NEST. And their names were here, but I've removed them. So as you can see on the right side, here's my rubric. They also had to include a reflective memo, which I didn't show in this video. There's one line here, actually 2 lines, 17 and 18, that have to do with collaboration. Your rubric won't have those, and these points will be different. But you can see I give a lot of feedback, and if you want to pause the video, you can see what I commended them for and what I thought they could have worked a bit harder on, or integratively, since they were a group, but you're not going to be. You can see how they performed on each of these items here. And again, there's a few items that have to do with it being a group, and those will be changed for you guys. Anyway, you now have this example, example 1. So now we're going to move on to example 2. The second example I wanted to share with you. This project scored a really high score, 96%. And you can see, again, I've taken all the students' names off of it. And their company name was Omnis, the documentation experts, and they were going to be proposing to write documentation for the Quick Cafe coffee maker, as you can see on the left. So this is their documentation plan. They have a nice branded front page, then they have their table of contents. Theirs is a bit simpler than the one I showed you prior, example 1. So you'll see in their TOC, their table of contents, their purpose, audience, deliverables, what they're going to provide. Again, you guys are not doing HTML help, you're doing a FAQ, receivables, and financial. Really nicely organized, really clean. They have their purpose. The Quick Cafe coffee maker allows users to brew up a batch of fresh coffee in the convenience of their own home. And then they describe the product in their first paragraph, and then the second paragraph they say, the Quick Cafe coffee maker needs documentation to introduce and get customers used to its operation and inner workings, as well as educate them of its various features. This proposal outlines how Omnis will develop and deliver this instruction material. They talk about the audience for the Quick Cafe documentation, which will be the buyers and the general consumers and users of the product. Customers are not assumed to know how to use a coffee maker or other coffee products. Documentation must be accessible to new users as well as experienced coffee lovers. I love how they talk about accessibility here. Here's what they're going to deliver and the details within those deliverables and how long each will be, the format, the receivables, the tools, location, deadlines, and then some other items that they saw in some of the templates. I told many of you in conferences that you did not have to do the financial component. You can if you want, but it's pretty conjectural given that you're doing this for a class and you don't really know what the costs are. I mean, you could do internet research for that, but and then they have the signature page on the last page. This one is much shorter than the previous example, but that was actually a benefit of it. Again, this was a group project. It being shorter indicates that they worked really cohesively as a team and they did strong editing. They made sure there wasn't any bloat or redundancy. That all makes for really strong professional communication. So you can see what they earned on each criteria here. Everything in the reflective memo was at least an A level or above. The documentation plan, they did really well. They lost a little bit. They got a low A on this one. Plan clearly reveals an understanding of document's primary audience, the recipient, and the second layer audience, the readers of the plan documentation. They didn't make it super clear that they knew much about this company, their past products, and their documentation history. Let's see, in the deliverables section is well developed and shows an understanding of features of this genre. Also, they lost a few points there, but largely this was all very strong. So you can pause this video and read all of these comments. I wanted to create this short video for you, sharing a few examples of past documentation plans that had been created as a part of this class. Again, I had to do a little groundwork to make it happen since these were group projects from 4 years ago, but they have been anonymized, so I think we're good to go. And I hope you'll watch this video a few times to see what is possible in this assignment. Thanks.